Hello, in this video I'll be demonstrating the Plans page functionality. Before I get started, I'd like to identify some commonly used nomenclature. This is to assist you in understanding things as I go along describing certain parts of the interface. Each plan is displayed by what we call a service card. Each service card is organized by a set of tasks, a group of assets, a title, an interval, and the ability to either enable or disable the selected service plan, to either receive or not receive notifications when the plan is due. Additionally, each plan has a one-time or recurring indicator to signify whether or not the plan is to happen once or over and over again. Now that you have a basic understanding of what a service plan is, I'll next show you how you can sort, filter, and search through the various plans. Let's get started. Sorting, filtering, and searching on plans work in the same way as in other parts of the application. All the necessary inputs are located at the top of the page, here. There are a couple of ways to filter plans. The first input here allows you to filter on occurrence, so whether it's recurring or one-time, enabled status, and the type of interval. The second input allows you to filter the plans by schedule. Schedules are covered in detail in another video. And lastly, you can type some text here in the input to filter by plan name. Additionally, you can sort the list by name or created date in both ascending and descending order. As with other filtering mechanisms in the application, you can also combine the filters to your liking depending on your needs. So let's say we needed to filter by all enabled plans that went by a certain name, say Quick Fix. You can do so by combining the filters. If I wanted all plans that went by the name of Quick Fix regardless of enabled status, I could remove one of the filters and the appropriate plans would display. Now that we know how to pick through all of our plans, let's talk about how to add, edit, and delete plans. Before we go ahead and dive into creating a plan, let's first think about a maintenance scenario we might encounter. So let's say you have some damage to one of the fenders on a vehicle in your fleet, but the vehicle itself needs to be in service for a couple of weeks and can't be serviced right away. This is a great example of where a one-time service plan would come in handy. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in and create a one-time service plan here by clicking the Add Plan button. And I'll go ahead and name this plan Cosmetic Repairs. And we'll give it a quick description of fix the minor visual flaws of the vehicle. And great. So now we need to add an interval to our plan, so I'll make sure I'm on the Intervals tab here, and this will be a one-time repair, so I'll select the one-time option here. Now, before I continue, I should point out that you may have noticed some of the inputs disappeared when I chose the one-time option. That's intentional, and I'll go over those options a little bit later for the recurring plans, but for now we'll just keep that in the back of our heads and keep chugging along with the one-time plan. So in this particular case, I don't want to perform this service at a certain engine hour or odometer setting. I'd like this repair to be performed at a certain time. So I'll select the time option and click the little calendar icon to bring up this date picker that will allow me to easily select a date in the future. And we need this service to be performed in a couple of weeks, so I'll go ahead and choose a date that is a couple of weeks out from today. Great. Now we need to set the due overdue status, so I'll come over here to this slider that will allow me to set a percentage at which the plan will be considered due and overdue. By default, we set the due status to 90%, and I'll just go ahead and leave it there. So you're probably asking yourself, what does that mean? That means that from now until the time we select here on the left, at the 90% point in time, this plan will cross a due threshold and will indicate as such in other parts of the application, for instance on the status page. Now that we have the interval all set up, we can add some tasks and assets. So I'll click over here on the Tasks tab and we can start adding tasks. Now what you see here is what we call a multi-select. It has some filtering at the top and you can either search in this input here for a particular task, so we'll type body, and you can see the list will filter down to all the body tasks. Or if you simply want to select them all, you can click this Select All button here, and similar to other filters in the application, they have a combination effect too. So if you have text in the input and the list is narrowed down, and then I press the Select All button, you can see that it will simply add the items from the left to the list on the right. Similarly, if I remove the word body and then press the Select All button, it will add all the tasks from the left to the list. And then if I simply want to remove everything, I can press the Deselect All button. Let's quickly add our tasks back over here to the list. So now that I have my tasks added to the list on the right, I can sort them by dragging them in any order I choose. The order displayed here is the order they'll show up in other parts of the application. So I'd like to service the parts of the fender that have damage before replacing any parts, so I'll drag this up here. Great. Now that we have tasks, let's add some assets. There are a couple of ways you can add assets to the plan. You can either add assets one by choosing the Assets option here and selecting the assets you'd like to add, or you can choose the Groups option and add an asset by their designated group. As a quick aside, you can add groups to the system by heading to the main app here and choosing to add a group, where you can then give the group a group name and description, and add assets and users associated with that group. For now, I'll just choose a few random assets and click the Save button to finalize our plan. Now, at this point, we've created and finalized a one-time plan, but I've not discussed the details of a recurring plan yet, so let's touch on that now. Recurring plans are very similar to one-time plans, with the exception that the intervals differ slightly and that they happen more than once. So let's just create a new plan here, and I'll click the Add Plan button. And again, let's create a scenario for this plan. A typical form of maintenance on a vehicle is an oil change, so let's call this one Standard Oil Change. And we'll give it a description of Perform Standard Preventative Maintenance Oil Change. And the enabled checkbox is checked, so good, the plan will be enabled. Now, here's where the process differs a little slightly. On the Intervals tab, we'll make sure the recurring is selected, and it is by default, so good. Since this is a standard oil change plan, typical preventative oil change maintenance dictates that we change the oil in our fleet vehicles every 3,000 miles or so. I'll set the interval to use the vehicle's odometer, and we'll set that value to 3,000 miles. Now, we have the option here to specify a starting and ending mileage, and I could very well do that, and then we would receive notifications from the system when the plan was due, so long as the vehicle was within the specified mileage range. However, since this is a very general preventative maintenance oil change plan, I don't really want to do that, as I want this plan to cover all vehicles, regardless of the actual mileage of the vehicle. But if I wanted the plan to only apply to vehicles within a certain mileage range, I could. In addition to every 3,000 miles, I also want to add a time interval. So if the vehicle doesn't roll 3,000 miles before the selected time period, the plan will be due regardless, thus enforcing good preventative maintenance habits. So I'm going to add a time interval here and set that to 90 days. And again, if I wanted to get super specific with the date range, I could do that as well, but we won't do that here. Now, you can see that the due overdue slider is, again, defaulted to 90%. So this means that based on our settings of every 3,000 miles and every 90 days, the plan would be due at the 90% threshold. So at 2,700 miles and or 81 days, this plan would be due. Once we hit the actual 3,000 miles or 90 days threshold, the plan would then become overdue. Now, there's one last thing I've yet to touch on, and that's this Use Fixed Intervals checkbox here. Here's how the fixed intervals work. If we were to check the fixed intervals checkbox like this plan would be due at whatever interval we set it to. So we'll need to reset our intervals here because once you check the fixed intervals checkbox, it resets those for you. And a quick note, when you use fixed intervals, you can only set one type of interval at a time. So in our case, we'll set the interval to 3,000 miles. So at every 3,000 interval, 3,000, 6,000, 9,000, etc., this plan would be due, regardless of whatever the odometer was at when we logged the service. As another quick aside, logging service when it occurs is covered in another video, so please refer to that video for a detailed description of how to go about doing that. Now, if we uncheck the checkbox, this means that we would want a variable interval, which in essence means that the 3,000 miles / 90 days counter would reset based on whenever we actually log that service on the logs page. So I want to be able to set both intervals, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the fixed interval checkbox. Now at this point I could add both intervals back in, but for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this plan, as the only thing that we have left to do is add tasks and assets, and I've already shown you how to do that. So we'll move on to editing plans. Editing plans is very similar to the plan creation process. There's almost no difference, with the exception that the plan is already created at the time of editing. To edit a plan, navigate to the plan's main page where you'll see all of your service cards. Choose which plan you'd like to edit and click the Edit button. From here, you'll be presented with the same screen as you would when creating the plan initially. All of what we've already covered when creating a plan is applicable. Simply make the necessary edits you'd like to make and click the Save button, and your changes will apply. In this case, I'll just simply move the Do Overdue slider a little and then click Save. Now we'll move to deleting plans. Well, as you might imagine, this little delete button here is kind of the only operation you need to perform. To delete a plan, simply click the Delete button. You'll be prompted to verify this is your intended action, and to finalize, click Delete again. Now, let's pop back into the edit screen here. You may have noticed when we were editing the plan that there was this different button over here to the right underneath the summary called the Save Copy As button. This button will allow you to create an exact replica of the plan that you're editing or creating at that time. This feature can help you save time when creating multiple service plans that may only vary by a couple of small attributes, whether by the assets or just by a couple of tasks. To copy a plan, click the Edit button as you would if you were going to edit a plan. And then on the right-hand side of the page, again, you'll see that Save Copy As button. Simply click that, and you'll now immediately have a copy of that plan. You'll need to re-enter your intervals, tasks, and assets for this plan, and then when you're done, click Save. Then, as you can see here on the main plans page, after I click the Save button, a new plan has been created with the title of that plan prefixed with the words Copy Of. Now let's move on to exporting your data. As in other parts of the application, exporting works the same way, and it'll provide you with the same results. You'll get a spreadsheet with all of the information based on the particular view that you're looking at or particular page you're on. To export, simply click this Export Data button here at the top, and you'll be provided with a spreadsheet. And that's it, folks. This has been an in-depth look at the maintenance plans page in the TeMeDa application. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.